In a land where twilight lingered long past its welcome and dawn felt more myth than certainty, there was a story. A tale whispered from elder to child, from dreamer to skeptic, about a bird unlike any other, the bird of spring's dawn. It was no ordinary creature, they said. Its feathers shimmered as though spun from molten sunrise, and its song could weave peace from chaos, turning grief to joy and hatred to forgiveness. But the bird did not sing for the unworthy, nor did it suffer to be caged. The bird appeared only once each year, at the precise moment when winter surrendered its last breath and spring exhaled its first. Its home was the forest of mirrors, a place of shimmering illusions and beguiling dangers, where truth and deception danced so closely they were indistinguishable. Few who entered the forest returned, and those who did were never the same. Legends claimed that the bird was not merely a creature, but a guardian of balance, a being bound to the first light of creation. Some believed its song held the power to end wars and dissolve ancient curses, while others whispered that its melody revealed the deepest secrets of the soul. Yet the bird's song was not a gift to be taken. It was a covenant to be earned. As the story grew, so did the longing of those who heard it. Kings and warriors, beggars and saints, all dreamed of hearing the bird's melody. Yet year after year, the forest of mirrors swallowed their hopes. It was said that only the pure of heart could find the bird and hear its song. But who among mortals could claim such purity? This year, as the last snow melted and the air grew thick with the promise of renewal, the stage was set for a new chapter in the tale. Two figures, as different as night and day, would step into the forest in search of the bird. The first was Lysara, queen of the Fae, a creature of beauty and cunning. Her emerald wings glimmered like twilight rain, and her voice could enchant the most hardened heart. She ruled a realm of eternal dusk, where mortals and immortals alike dreamed under her watchful gaze. Yet Lysara's heart, as radiant as it seemed, was cloaked in ambition. She did not seek the bird for peace, but for power. A power to bend the fragile balance of the world to her will. The second was Alaric, a prince burdened by shadows. His kingdom lay under a terrible curse, one born of pride and betrayal. Crops withered in the fields, rivers ran dry, and his people wasted away under a pall of despair. The curse whispered of a terrible fate, a prophecy that only the bird's song could undo. Alaric, a man scarred by his own failings, carried this weight like a stone tied to his soul. Though they did not yet know it, their paths would soon cross in the forest of mirrors, and the bird's song would decide not only their fates, but the fate of the world itself. As the first dawn of spring approached, the land held its breath. The mists thickened, the air grew electric, and the forest of mirrors stirred from its slumber, ready to test those who dared enter. The bird, perched on a branch that gleamed like polished gold, turned its luminous eyes to the horizon. It had sung for kings and beggars, for the noble and the wicked. But this year felt different. It felt the weight of destinies converging, of hearts that would be unmasked, and truths that could not remain hidden. And so, as the first light of spring began to rise, the bird waited. It waited for the steps of the queen and the prince, for the trials they would face, and for the choice they would make. For in the end, the bird did not grant its song to the strongest or the cleverest. It sang only for those who could answer the riddle of their own hearts. The forest of mirrors loomed like a boundary between worlds, its edges cloaked in shimmering mist that caught the faintest light and fractured it into fleeting rainbows. No path was visible, no compass steady enough to guide a traveller through its deceptive expanse. Yet, at the threshold of this enigmatic realm, two figures arrived, each drawn by a purpose that surpassed fear. Lysara stepped into the mist first, her emerald wings tucked close to her back, their glow muted as if the forest demanded humility from even a queen. The air here felt strange, alive with whispers that coiled around her like phantom tendrils. She felt them tugging at the corners of her mind, teasing out fragments of dreams she had long buried. Images of her first flight, of days when her laughter echoed louder than her ambition, flickered before her like distant stars. Her lips tightened. The forest would not distract her. She was no mortal, easily swayed by illusions or sentiment. The bird's song would be hers, a tool to consolidate her dominion. Her steps were confident, but the further she ventured, the heavier the air grew. It smelled of damp earth and ancient secrets, a perfume laced with quiet malice. Miles away, though the forest played tricks with time and space, Prince Alaric entered through a different veil of mist. Unlike Lysara, he bore no outward radiance, no wings or ethereal glow. His armor was plain, its once polished surface dulled by years of neglect. Yet his gaze, though shadowed by grief, burned with quiet determination. The whispers began almost immediately, low and taunting. They called his name, twisted his memories. He saw his father's disapproving glare, his brother's lifeless form. He heard the cries of his people, a chorus of despair he could not silence. He clenched his jaw, refusing to yield to the ghosts. They were his penance, reminders of his failings, but they would not stop him. The forest seemed to sense his resolve, and the path before him shifted, revealing a faint glow in the distance. He followed, unaware that his journey was weaving closer to another's. The forest tested them both, its challenges as unique as their desires. Lysara was confronted by reflections of herself, shimmering in pools of silver water. They were not the proud queen she had become, but the child she once was, a creature of wonder and empathy. "You've forgotten us," they accused, their voices soft but unrelenting. "You were not always this cold." Why do you seek the bird, Lysara? Is it truly for peace or for dominion? Lysara turned away from the images, her wings trembling with an emotion she refused to name. I seek what is mine by right, she said aloud, her voice sharp as broken glass. The world bends to those strong enough to claim it. But the words felt hollow, and the whispers lingered, as if waiting for her to stumble over her own truths. For Alaric, the forest cruelty was subtler. It lured him into a clearing where golden sunlight poured like honey, illuminating fields of wildflowers and rivers as clear as crystal. His kingdom restored, his people laughing and free, his mother alive again, her smile as warm as he remembered. Stay, the illusion urged. Here, there is no curse. Here, you are forgiven. Alaric's hand trembled as he reached toward the vision, longing to believe it. But as his fingers brushed the air, the scene shimmered, revealing the skeletal remains of his kingdom beneath the illusion's surface. The flowers turned to ash, the rivers to blackened veins. He stepped back, horror-stricken but resolute. Peace built on lies is no peace at all, he murmured, his voice hoarse but firm. The clearing dissolved into mist, leaving him standing alone but unbroken. It was not long before their paths converged, drawn together by the forest's unseen hand. Lysara emerged from the shadows first, her gaze sharp as a blade, her expression unreadable. Alaric, though wary, greeted her with a nod, recognizing her for what she was, an immortal, her presence as much a force of nature as the forest itself. And so we are rivals, Lysara said, her voice smooth but edged with steel. The bird song will choose only one. Why should I not end your quest now? Alaric met her gaze without flinching. Because the bird's song cannot be stolen or forced. If you think you are worthy, then prove it, not to me but to the bird itself. For a moment, the queen's lips curled in a faint smirk, as though amused by his defiance. But she said nothing, and together they pressed deeper into the forest, bound by their rivalry and the unseen trials yet to come. The forest of mirrors watched them, its whispers growing louder. For one sought power, the other redemption. But the bird cared little for intentions cloaked in ambition or despair. It waited for dawn, when their true hearts would be revealed. The heart of the forest of mirrors was unlike any place Lysara or Alaric had ever known. The trees grew impossibly tall, their branches tangling into intricate patterns that seemed to hum with unseen energy. The ground shimmered as though scattered with shards of glass, reflecting not the sky above but other places, other times. The forest itself seemed to breathe, its air thick with the weight of stories untold. It was here that Lysara and Alaric found themselves standing side by side, unwilling allies against the enigmatic will of the forest. The faint, haunting call of the bird echoed somewhere in the distance, pulling them forward like a thread through a labyrinth. Despite the uneasy truce between them, the tension was palpable. Lysara's sharp eyes watched Alaric's every move, her expression a mask of cool detachment. The prince, though aware of her scrutiny, focused on the path ahead, his grip on the hilt of his sword firm but unthreatening. The forest had other plans. They came upon a crystalline pond, its surface so still it seemed frozen in time. Surrounding it were carvings etched into the stones, ancient symbols that shifted and twisted when looked at directly. Alaric knelt beside the water, his reflection gazing back at him with an intensity that felt almost alive. Lysara stood behind him, her wings casting faint, iridescent shadows across the ground. But as they stared, the water began to ripple. Their reflections moved independently, stepping out of sync with their real selves. Alaric froze, his breath catching as his mirrored self rose to its feet, its eyes burning with an accusatory light. The reflection spoke, its voice a cruel echo of his own. You blame the curse for your people's suffering, but who bears the fault if not you? Pride made you blind to their needs, arrogance deaf to their cries. You wear your guilt like a badge, but it is only an excuse for your failure. Alaric recoiled as if struck. His reflection stepped closer, its presence oppressive. You think a bird's song will redeem you? Redemption is earned, not granted. Alaric's jaw tightened, his fists clenched. I have made mistakes, he admitted, his voice low but steady. But I will not let my people suffer because of them. The song is not for me. It is for them. The reflection hesitated, its fierce gaze softening before it dissolved into the water, leaving Alaric trembling but resolute. Lysara's reflection emerged next, her likeness rising from the pond in a cascade of liquid light. It circled her like a predator, its expression a mocking mirror of her own. Do you even remember why you once cared for this world? It sneered. You call yourself a queen, but what do you rule, Lysara? Mortals bound to your will, or dreams you've long abandoned? Lysara's eyes narrowed, her wings flaring slightly. I rule because I must. Without me, their dreams would scatter to chaos. The reflection laughed, a sound that echoed with a hollow, cruel edge. You rule because you fear irrelevance. You seek the bird not for peace but for power. You have not known compassion in centuries. Why pretend now? Lysara's breath caught, but her composure did not falter. Power is not a sin, she said softly, her voice laced with a dangerous undertone. And I will not be judged by a shadow. The reflection smirked, as if knowing it had struck a deeper nerve before fading back into the pond. A third voice filled the clearing, neither a reflection nor a whisper, but something larger, older. What does the dawn reveal that the night conceals? The words resonated through the forest, spoken not by any figure, but by the very air itself. The riddle hung heavy between them, a challenge as inscrutable as the forest. The bird's song would only come to the one who answered truthfully, a truth not crafted by wit, but uncovered by the soul. They exchanged a glance, wary but understanding that the path ahead was not one they could tread alone. "We have until dawn," Lysara said, her tone clipped, as though the admission of limitation was painful. Alaric nodded. "Then let us find the answer, together." They moved deeper into the forest, the bird's call growing fainter but no less compelling. The forest of mirrors shifted around them, bending space and time as it tested their resolve. Their reflections had revealed wounds neither had wanted to confront. But the riddle demanded more than acknowledgement of their flaws. It demanded truth. With each step, the forest grew darker, as though the dawn itself might never come. The bird waited, perched on its unseen branch, as its challengers journeyed closer to the edge of revelation. The stars began to fade as the first tendrils of dawn crept into the forest of mirrors. Lysara and Alaric, their steps guided more by instinct than understanding, pressed forward through the shifting landscape. The bird's call had grown silent, leaving only the riddle as their guide. What does the dawn reveal that the night conceals? Neither spoke as they walked, the tension between them no longer born of rivalry, but something deeper, something shared. The forest had stripped them bare, forcing them to confront reflections they could not deny. Yet the answer eluded them, and with each passing moment, the horizon brightened. They reached a glade unlike any other they had seen, a hollow where the trees bent inward, their silvery leaves trembling as though moved by an unseen wind. In the center stood a single tree, its bark glowing faintly with veins of golden light. Atop its highest branch perched the bird. It was smaller than Lysara had imagined, but its presence filled the clearing. Its feathers shimmered as though catching the light of 1,000 unseen suns, and its eyes, golden, unblinking, seemed to see through the very fabric of their souls. It tilted its head, waiting. Lysara stepped forward first, her wings casting a faint, iridescent glow over the clearing. Her voice, usually steady, wavered slightly as she spoke. "Dawn reveals ambition," she said, her tone firm despite the flicker of doubt in her heart. "The night hides fear and hesitation, but the dawn brings clarity, a chance to seize what one desires most." The bird remained still, its golden eyes narrowing slightly. A weight filled the air, heavy and unyielding. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, and Lysara knew her answer had not been enough. Alaric stepped forward next, his hands trembling slightly. The prince looked up at the bird, his gaze shadowed but resolute. "Dawn reveals truth," he said, his voice quieter than Lysara's, but charged with something raw. "The night hides our doubts and disguises our fears, but the dawn forces us to see ourselves as we truly are." the bird let out a single note, soft but resonant, a sound that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of the glade. Its golden eyes softened, and it spread its wings, descending gracefully to a lower branch. There, it began to sing. The song was unlike anything either of them had ever heard. It was not music, but a tapestry of sound, woven from threads of light and shadow. Each note seemed to reach into the depths of their beings, pulling forth memories, fears, and hopes. The glade shimmered with its power, the air alive with its melody. For Alaric, the song was a balm to wounds long ignored. He saw his kingdom not in ruin, but in potential, a place that could heal if he had the courage to lead it. He saw his people, their faces no longer etched with despair, but lit with hope. And he saw himself, not as the prince who had failed, but as the man who could rise again. Tears streamed down his face as the weight of his guilt lifted, replaced by a quiet but unshakable resolve. The bird's song had revealed not just truth, but the strength to face it. For Lysara, the song was a mirror she could not escape. It showed her the cost of her ambition, an emptiness she had long denied. She saw the fae she once was, a creature of wonder and empathy, and the queen she had become, cloaked in power, but starved of connection. The song did not condemn her, but it did not absolve her either. It simply showed her the path she had walked and left her to decide if it was the one she wished to continue. Her wings drooped, their glow dimming as the song ended. She had not won the bird's favor, but neither had she lost. The truth it had revealed was hers alone to bear. As the final note faded, the bird turned its gaze to Alaric. It spread its luminous wings and rose into the air, circling the glade once before flying toward the rising sun. Its song lingered in the air, a faint echo of hope and peace. The forest began to change, its silvery mist thinning as the light of dawn grew stronger. The path forward became clear, leading back to the world beyond. Alaric turned to Lysara, his expression weary but grateful. "Thank you," he said simply, the words heavy with sincerity, "for walking this path with me." Lysara met his gaze, her emerald eyes unreadable. "The bird sang for you, Prince," she said softly. "Use its gift wisely." Without another word, she spread her wings and rose into the sky, disappearing into the fading mists. Alaric watched her go, a part of him wondering if their paths would cross again. The prince turned toward the path leading out of the forest. His kingdom awaited, and for the first time in years, he felt ready to face it. As the light of dawn bathed the land, Alaric stepped forward, carrying the bird's song within him. A melody that promised not only peace, but the courage to create it. The first light of dawn stretched its golden fingers across the land, painting the forest of mirrors in hues of soft amber and pale rose. The mist that had veiled the forest for centuries now receded, revealing paths that had once seemed endless and shadows that no longer danced with menace. As the bird disappeared into the horizon, its song still lingered faintly, an echo of something eternal. Prince Alaric stood at the edge of the glade, the cool morning breeze brushing against his face. The weight that had clung to him, guilt, doubt, failure, had lifted, but not in the way he had expected. The bird's song had not erased his burdens, but it had shown him how to carry them without being consumed by their weight. He stepped forward, his boots crunching softly against the crystalline grass, each step guided by a quiet determination. The riddle of the forest. What does the dawn reveal that the night conceals? Still lingered in his mind, its answer resonating with the clarity of truth. It revealed who he truly was. Not a fallen prince or a cursed leader, but a man capable of redemption. As he walked, he thought of Lysara. The Fae Queen's departure had been as enigmatic as her presence, her emerald eyes leaving behind a lingering impression of untold stories. The bird had not sung for her, but Alaric sensed that her journey was far from over. He had seen the way her expression softened, the flicker of doubt in her gaze as the song unfolded. The forest had unmasked her as surely as it had him, forcing her to confront truths she had long hidden behind the armor of power. He wondered if she too had found her answer. The edge of the forest was near now, the trees thinning to reveal rolling hills bathed in the light of morning. Alaric paused for a moment, turning back to take one last look at the forest of mirrors. In the distance, he thought he saw a faint shimmer, a winged figure moving gracefully through the mist, her path unknowable. A part of him felt a strange kinship with her, though they had come seeking different things. But there was no time for reflection. His people awaited him. When Alaric emerged from the forest, the air felt different, lighter, filled with the quiet hum of spring awakening. The land beyond the forest was still scarred by the curse that had plagued it. But there was something new now, a faint pulse of life beneath the decay, as though the bird's song had awakened not just Alaric, but the kingdom itself. As he descended the hills toward the village that marked the edge of his realm, he saw the first signs of renewal. The river, which had run dry for years, now glistened in the morning light, its waters flowing sluggishly but steadily. Fields once choked with thorns now bore the first green shoots of new growth. And the people, his people, stepped tentatively from their homes, their faces lined with weariness but touched with hope. They saw him and froze, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. Alaric, the cursed prince who had vanished into the forest, now returned. He raised a hand in greeting, his voice steady but gentle. "I have heard the song of the dawn," he said, his words carrying across the clearing. "And I carry its promise with me. The curse is not broken, but its hold weakens. Together, we will heal this land." For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the soft murmur of the wind through the trees. Then slowly, The people began to gather around him, their faces softening with tentative smiles. A child stepped forward, offering him a single flower, a fragile bloom of spring, its petals streaked with pale blue. Alaric knelt to accept the flower, his heart swelling with a quiet gratitude. He looked into the child's eyes and saw not fear, but trust. For the first time in years, he felt the stirrings of true peace. Far away, in her realm of twilight, Lysara stood at the edge of her glade, watching the first rays of dawn filter through the veil of eternal dusk. The bird's song still echoed faintly in her mind, a melody she could not forget. She turned her gaze to the mortal world beyond, where kingdoms rose and fell, and dreams wove themselves into the fabric of existence. She had not won the bird's favor, but she had gained something else. An understanding that power alone could not fill the emptiness within her. The forest of mirrors had shown her a path she had not considered, one that required not dominance but humility. Her wings shimmered faintly, their light dimmer but steadier than before. For the first time in centuries, Lysara felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar yet profound, the desire to change. And so, the dawn of spring brought its gifts to all who sought the bird. For Alaric, it was redemption and the courage to lead his people. For Lysara, it was a glimpse of the queen she could become, if only she had the strength to reclaim her heart. And for the world, it was a promise that even in the darkest night, the song of the dawn would always rise. The bird of spring's dawn disappeared into legend once more, its melody carried on the wind, a reminder that peace was not given but earned, and that truth, no matter how painful, was the first light of hope.